As we begin to wrap up, I do want to provide you with some general risks that are facing nonprofit boards. These apply to all board members, all nonprofit organizations, regardless of state. These are just some general trends that at the Center for Nonprofit Excellence and in our practice that we see boards exposed to on a daily basis and that you should be aware of. The first is exposure from social media use, misuse, and naivete. I think we can all agree that over the past 10 years, social media has exploded around the country. There are more channels and platforms available more now than ever. There's Facebook, there's Twitter, there's Instagram, there's more than we can list in this presentation. And it's not just how your organization officially is communicating on those channels, it's how are your individual board members and staff members using those channels, and what liability may they be exposing the organization to through their use of those channels. Unhappy staff and volunteers. We talked earlier about the importance of human resources policies and procedures. Unhappy staff and volunteers expose the organization and board members to a significant risk. The third is IRS Form 990, which is the organization's individual tax return and its federal tax-exempt status. To protect that tax-exempt status, board members should have a basic understanding of the restrictions imposed by the tax laws and implement policies and procedures responsive to these requirements and Form 990 reporting mandates. This goes back to the need for independent financial review of the organization's business records, and also a board member needs to review that tax return on an annual basis. Copyrights and trademarks. Nonprofit organizations will often use logos, slogans, sayings. If they're promoting a charitable event, there may be a logo associated with that event. It's important that your organization have a policy and procedure in place for reviewing how you're using various logos and trademarks to make sure you're not infringing on the rights of others and exposing the organization and the board to additional liability. The fifth is an area that comes up often, particularly as we enter into an election cycle now. Lobbying and political activity compliance. For 501c3 organizations, there are no political campaign activities that are allowed. Lobbying is allowed within certain limits, and I would ask you to consult a specific tax professional for what those limits are. Generally, organizations may advocate on their own behalf. That is how lobbying is permitted. However, political campaign activities such as endorsing specific candidates, specific parties is prohibited and would endanger the 501c3 status of the entity. 501c6 organizations, which we haven't talked a whole lot about today, may engage in limited political campaign activities and may lobby as their primary activity. Sixth area of risk facing nonprofit boards comes from sexual harassment. This could be at the board level, at the staff level, and again underscores the need for specific policies, review, oversight, and monitoring at the organization level. Mistakes in contracting. We talked about purchasing and procurement in the past. Contracting mistakes or mistakes where the organization is acting outside of its own policy could expose the board or entity to risk. This touches on number 8, which is a lack of synchronicity between policy and practice. At regular intervals, a board, as part of its oversight function, should examine how the organization practically, on an everyday basis, in a report from the chief executive, is implementing the policies that are in place. As we said before, it's great that the policies and procedures exist and are written, but a board also should examine and have a report from the chief executive to make sure that those policies are being implemented, that the staff is trained and aware of all of those policies. Failure to understand and manage conflicts of interest, including the duty of loyalty. Nonprofits that fail to manage conflicts of interest run the risk of losing the public confidence, which is extremely important, or worse, becoming the object of media scandal. And 10th and finally, reliance on the goodwill, good nature, and insurance coverage of others.